Hi, friend. So you may have heard of the Barefoot Bandit, a teenager named Colton Harris-Moore, who became famous for stealing airplanes and staying one step ahead of the police. But friend, there's so much more to this story than a teenager stealing planes. And some of the things he did sound completely made up. So let's talk about what you may not know about the Barefoot Bandit. Colton Harris-Moore was born in Washington State in 1991 and grew up on Kamano Island. And his childhood was far from normal. By the time Colton was around 12 years old, he was already getting into serious trouble with the law. His home life was also extremely troubled, and as he got older, he began spending more and more time away from home. Eventually, Colton became comfortable living outdoors and hiding in the woods. He would disappear for days and break into vacation homes looking for food, water, blankets, and other things that he needed. But as he got older, the crimes became much more serious. Cars, boats, homes, businesses, computers, credit cards, and eventually airplanes. And that is where the story gets crazy. Colton developed a fascination with aviation. But here's the thing. He wasn't a trained pilot. He didn't have a pilot's license. Instead, investigators believed he taught himself by studying aviation materials and spending hundreds of hours using Microsoft Flight Simulator. Imagine being a teenager, hiding in the woods and spending your free time learning how to fly an airplane on the computer. And apparently, he learned enough to actually do it. In 2008, when Colton was only 17 years old, he allegedly stole a Cessna from Orcas Island. He took off and eventually crash landed hundreds of miles away, and somehow he survived. But that wasn't the end. Over the next couple of years, authorities connected Colton to multiple stolen aircrafts, boats, vehicles, and burglaries. Then in 2010, he stole an airplane in Indiana and flew it all the way to the Bahamas. Friend, a teenager who didn't have a pilot's license, flew a stolen plane across international waters, and he crash landed in the Bahamas. You would think that would finally be the end of the story, but nope, he escaped again. And now the Barefoot Bandit wasn't just a local teenage fugitive. He was the subject of an international manhunt. But here's another part of the story that I think is absolutely wild. While police were trying to find him, people on the internet were becoming fans of him. Thousands of people followed his story. There were Facebook fan groups, songs, merchandise, and even shirts saying, "Fly Colton Fly." Think about that. This teenager was wanted by police, but while some people saw him as an exciting teenage outlaw, there were real victims behind the story. People had their homes broken into, cars and boats were stolen, aircrafts were stolen, and people had to deal with the damage left behind. Eventually, though, the chase came to an end. On July 11th, 2010, Colton was in the Bahamas when authorities finally caught up with him. He was trying to escape by boat, but the boat became stuck. Bahamian police disabled the engine, and Colton was finally captured. He was only 19 years old. After years of running, the Barefoot Bandit's ventures was over. But then something else happened that sounds like it came straight out of Hollywood. Colton's story became valuable. While he was in prison, 20th Century Fox acquired the rights to his life story in a deal reportedly worth up to $1.3 million. But before you think, wait, so he became a millionaire because of his crimes? Not exactly, friend. The money was supposed to go toward paying his victims. Later, reports said hundreds of thousands of dollars from the deal were sent to the U.S. Marshals for distribution of those victims. And there's actually a documentary about his story called Fly Colt Fly, The Legend of the Barefoot Bandit. But the big Hollywood movie that was being developed never became the major movie people expected. Colton was eventually released from prison in 2016 Afterward, reports said that he got a clerical job at the law firm of one of his former defense attorneys. Imagine that. And surprisingly, he also talked about wanting to pursue aviation legally. But because of his criminal history and the money he still owed in restitution, rebuilding his life wasn't going to be simple. And honestly, friend, I think that's what makes the Barefoot Bandit story so fascinating. Not because stealing airplanes was exciting, not because people turned him into an internet celebrity, but because he was a troubled teenager who went from hiding in the woods to teaching himself about airplanes, to stealing aircrafts, to flying across international waters, to becoming the subject of an international manhunt, and eventually having to face the consequences of everything he had done. His story sounds like something Hollywood would invent, but it actually happened. So, friend, what surprises you the most? Was it that Colton lived in the woods, that he taught himself how to fly, that he actually flew a stolen airplane to the Bahamas, or that thousands of people were actually following and cheering for him while he was on the run, or that he actually crashed many times and survived? Let me know in the comments because I really want to know what stood out to you the most. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one, friend.